Let's talk about child behavior problems and solutions. I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about child behavior problems. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the most common child behavior problems that you could be facing and what the teaching self-government solutions are to those problems. Probably one of the most common things that I hear is that a child is being disobedient. So the word obey actually comes from the word obeire, or the Latin obiedo, which actually means to follow. That's literally what it means. So you have to ask yourself, if you think your child is not obeying, then who are they following? What are they following? Are they actually following you? Hopefully, you are teaching them ahead of time what they need to do to obey. In the self-government style of parenting, we pre-teach everything ahead of time. So we tell our child, I'm going to teach you the skills for how to follow an instruction. Then, here's the skills. Like I tell them the 5 steps of how to follow instructions. Then I say, if you don't do one of those skills, then here's exactly how I will correct you for that problem. And here are the consequences that would be part of that correction, so that everything is known up front. So pre-teaching is huge, preparing a person to succeed. Then in the moment, you consistently follow through and their chances of obedience actually go way up. So what are some of those skills and principles that they need to be following that are self-government skills? Let's talk about those next. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of behaviors, and we're going to be using these skills. So that I don't have to hold these up every single time, I'm just going to mention what these children's books teach. So these 4 children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills of self-government, which are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person learns these 4 basic skills, that takes care of 99% of their behavioral problems. So we are going to be coming back to these skills, and I'm going to show you how they can be used to solve any of the behavioral problems that you might be dealing with. Whining is a pretty common behavioral problem. Why do they whine? Well, because they want to tell us something, or maybe it's just because it works. It gets some pity attention. It gets somebody cuddling them and telling them everything's going to be fine, or they actually get their way. Sometimes children whine because it works, right? So it can't work. It can't be the type of communication that we teach our children. The best way to talk to your parent, to share your differing of opinion, or to discuss something that you might not agree with when you are a child, while using the teaching self-government system of communication, is to use the skill disagreeing appropriately. Remember, that was that purple book. So if you've been on this channel for a while, then you know that disagreeing appropriately is what I call the gateway skill to self-government. When a person learns to disagree appropriately, then they are choosing to engage the prefrontal cortex instead of going to the mid or back parts of the brain. When they use the skill, they seek to understand the other person, and then they share their point of view. Then they share their point of view, okay? That's really important to understand, because so often people think, well, as long as I'm not yelling, if I just share my point of view, that's disagreeing appropriately. No, disagreeing appropriately is saying that you understand the other person's point of view first. When disagreeing appropriately, a person stays completely calm in the process. So they look at the person or the situation, they keep a calm face, voice, and body. They say that they understand the other person's point of view. They share their point of view. They listen to what the other person has to say, and then they say okay and drop the subject. Because if you can't change the other person's mind, then you can't. And you might as well just say, okay, I tried my best, and drop the subject. That doesn't mean you have to do what they say, you know, especially if it's not your parent, because we use disagree appropriately with lots of different people, but we do need to just accept that we're not going to be able to control what they think or what they want in the moment. And when it does come to our parents, we probably should just, you know, do or not do whatever it is the parent was telling us at the time. Also related to whining, and this would also come into play with like anger management, stuff like that. We have to get the calmness first. When a person is completely out of instructional control, they will not follow instructions from their parents no matter what. The parent could say, I need you to go to your calm down spot. They won't go. The parent could say, I need you to do this skill. They won't do it. The parent can't break through to them. That means the child is completely out of control. The child needs to be instructed in how to calm down at that time. There is a process that I teach in my TSG parenting course called the Rule of Three. We actually do intensive teaching 2 different ways, one way for older children, one way for younger children. The Rule of Three is what we use for slightly older children. So using that's important, but also teaching the children ahead of time about their own calmness can be a game changer. So this 3-book set all about calmness could really be beneficial to you. This first book, Brain Power, which is, they're all the Calm Crew series, okay? Brain Power teaches them how their brain works, when it's calm, when it's not calm, what's going on. The second book in the Calm Crew series is Planning Power. It teaches them how to make a calm plan for themselves so that they can follow through on calmness when the time presents itself. And then the last book in the Calm Crew teaches Choosing Power. So this book teaches them how they can make a choice in a moment when it seems really hard and how to get themselves to that place where they can do that. So having that training in place can also make a big difference when it comes to in the moment when they're getting emotional at you. Siblings fighting is another behavior problem. What do we use for that? Also disagreeing appropriately. We also might need to use the skill accepting no answers. Oftentimes those types of problems happen because somebody's not observing proper boundaries with another person. So if they're arguing over a toy, or if they're arguing over whose shoe it is or sock it is or whose turn it is, then we might be needing to work on accepting a no answer, which there are 4 steps to that. You look at the person or the situation, you keep a calm face, voice, and body. You say, okay, or you ask to disagree appropriately, and then you drop the subject. When a person can accept no answers, they don't often end up having a ton of sibling rivalry. But if they do need to talk about something, hopefully they do use their skill disagreeing appropriately. Another behavior problem that parents deal with is when their children get off task. They give them an instruction to do, like go clean your room or get ready for bed or do your daily chore, do your homework, fill in the blank. And the child doesn't actually do it. They say they're going to do it, but they don't. They get distracted. Now, every child processes a little differently. Some get more distracted than others just based on their processing style, but even so, they need to learn how to follow through. So what you would teach them is the skill to following instructions. When a person learns to follow instructions, they learn to look at the person, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay, or ask to disagree appropriately to the instruction. Then they go do the task immediately and then check back. Those 2 things, doing the task immediately and then check back, are the things that make a great difference on whether they train themselves how to follow through or not. And what are you going to do if they don't check back? Do you just keep nagging? I hope you're not doing that, because that means that your parenting tolerances are too high. In order to teach self-government, we need to lower our tolerances and do more effective corrections. I'm going to talk about corrections and all that other kind of stuff in different places, like my TSG parenting course. But here, you can just remember they need those skills of self-government, because otherwise it's going to be hard to do a correction. Other common behavior problems are lying. So in order to conquer lying, you need to actually prepare for what I call controlling the impulse to lie. If somebody has a problem with lying, you might have to learn that skill. I teach that in my TSG parenting course. You also could use the skill accepting no answers to help them with that. So when it's a lie, it's a no, right? If they keep telling lies about certain things when they know they shouldn't, then they are not dropping the subject in their head. So they may get the thought in their head to tell a lie, but they need to tell themselves no and drop the subject. If they don't do that, they need to be corrected. Also, boundary issues are a big thing. Do they cross over boundary lines? Are they touching other people? Are they breathing somebody else's air? Are they in their personal space, taking things that don't belong to them? All of those kinds of things are also no answers. So they need to be able to accept no answers. What about taking personal responsibility for yourself? Obviously, following instructions helps a person take personal responsibility, but also being able to accept a consequence or correction helps a person take responsibility. You can't actually learn self-government unless you get the opportunity to accept consequences. I'm just going to say that again for your benefit. You can't learn self-government unless you get the opportunity to accept consequences, positive consequences and negative consequences. So often, we do not do the corrections when we should. Our tolerances are too high, we nag about things, we remind about things, we don't do the corrections, or we just ignore stuff when we feel like it's not going to be something they'll be able to change right then. Then they don't get to learn cause and effect. If a person is going to learn self-government, they have to understand the cause and effect of any given situation and possess a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control them. If they don't understand cause and effect or get those opportunities, they won't learn self-government. That's why having consequences is important. Now, there are natural consequences and synthetic consequences. They both teach in different ways. Synthetic consequences are oftentimes much more merciful. Natural consequences are usually reserved for older people, like older children or adults. And they do need to be talked about, but they shouldn't be necessarily carried out. There are different circumstances where you would learn either one of those. I don't have time to go into that in this video because that takes me into suddenly a whole 1-hour class about consequences, and that's all contained in my TSG parenting course. There are a lot of principles and skills that are in the Teaching Self-Government program that can help you with those really problem behaviors that you're dealing with. You don't have to be arguing all the time. You don't have to fight your children all the time. You don't have to feel emotionally drained and worn out because you're nagging and following and micromanaging and helicoptering the children all the time because they're not managing themselves. They can learn the skills that they need to be self-governed, and they can start it sooner than you think. They can also do it later than you think too. You can learn the skills of self-government right now. Maybe you don't know how to disagree appropriately. You can learn that skill. But your children, when they're babies and toddlers, can also learn that skill of self-government, even in their very young ages. So start today learning self-government skills and principles. If you want to learn more about the Teaching Self-Government course, you can either go to teachingselfgovernment.com, or I have another video that you can watch called Child Behavior Classes that will give you some insights into what you can expect from the TSG parenting course. I'll see you there.